This is Garis, Masculist, MGTOW flyers, that is 2-3-page essays on the themes of masculism and MGTOW, written by and read aloud by Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. This is flyer number 257, entitled Masculists in Women's Studies Classes. Description. This flyer suggests that masculists should attend women's studies classes on campus to better know your enemy. When the masculist-feminist gender ideological war heats up, as it must, as male students become ever more fed up with the female domination of the universities and become determined to put their male foot down. Flyer itself. Masculists in Women's Studies Classes by Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. Email profhugodegaris@yahoo.com. Website profhugodegaris.wordpress.com. This flyer's main idea is that it's in the self-interest of masculist theorists to improve their knowledge of feminist theory so as to better know your enemy when the masculist-feminist ideological war really heats up. I think one of the main reasons why so many young men choose to not go to university is that universities in the Western countries have become too feminist, treating men badly and putting men down, creating an environment that is not conducive to male happiness. This problem is just one of many which have the common theme that in our Western societies feminism has become too powerful at the expense of the other half of humanity, that is, men. It's time to restore a balance between the interests of the two sexes, and for that to happen, society needs to be taught masculist ideas to act as a counterweight to feminist dogmas and feminist overreach. One of the reasons why young women on campus react so negatively towards their male colleagues is that they have been indoctrinated with feminist ideas and know nothing about masculist ideas, so inevitably come away with the impression that the oppression of one gender by the other is a one-way street. Well, it isn't. Women oppress men too. Look at female parasitism, the enslavement of men, being manslaves to fluffy parasitic women who don't bother to get off their parasitic asses to fit up as high school students, bothering to study career-competent majors so that they can study STEM, science, tech, engineering and math, and the professions at university, so that they become FIPS as adults and not expect to parasite off the money of a man, as do fluffies. Young men grow up nowadays in almost totally female environments. Women utterly dominate primary school teaching and increasingly high school teaching, even in topics traditionally seen as male, that is, math and the sciences. These young men have no male role models, so inevitably become brainwashed by the ideas and ideologies imposed on them by women, ideas that are largely feminist-oriented. These young men are made to feel that they are inferior due to their sex, that they belong to the sex that is looked down on by the dominant sex, that is, female. This inferiority complex that is generated in young men results in a malaise that continues at university, where now 2/3 of students are female and growing. Only in the STEM fields are males in a majority. Women students monopolize the professions in many cases, for example, medicine, dentistry, law, etc. Women's studies professors, always female, have made women's studies-oriented courses or mini-courses compulsory on many campuses, with no mention at all of men's issues. Not surprisingly, many young men on campus feel ignored, that their male interests are not taken into account, so feel frustrated and often depressed. This situation has got so bad that many young men simply refuse to go to university and prefer to learn a trade instead, going to trade school. where they will pick up a skill that the marketplace values, rather than a career incompetent degree in something the economy does not value. As a masculist, I feel that the time is ripe for a rebellion of male students on campus to see it become widespread, so that it then spreads to the wider society and eventually into the divorce courts, so that feminists do not dominate them, using them as a means to punish men for being men, with the rationale that men have oppressed women for centuries. So it's only appropriate that women now punish men, now that women have the power to do so. I suggest that male university students start this rebellion in several ways. One is to become students of women's studies classes, to learn what the feminists are saying about men, and using scientific criteria to judge whether what these women's studies professors are saying makes any sense, especially scientific sense. To the extent that it does, then those feminist lessons need to be absorbed into the intellectual repertoire of these young masculist theorists, so that when they debate or argue with feminists, they are capable of persuading their female opponents that they, that is, the masculist theorists, are familiar with feminist arguments, feminist ideas, feminist concepts, and are capable of shooting holes in them when there are holes to be found when held up to scientific scrutiny. When these feminist arguments do not hold up to logical analysis and to scientific empirical research, then they should be refuted and debunked. Young men need to become intellectually armed with masculist ideas, masculist rhetoric, so that they can challenge the irrational, non-scientific statements made by their women's studies professors, who are always women. I don't know of one male women's studies professor. I suggest the rebellion begin with the following steps. The first is, of course, to become conscious and informed of masculist ideas. For example, listen and watch my Masculist MGTOW flyers. Watch the many MGTOW content providers on YouTube and other platforms. Become well informed about MGTOW and masculist ideas so that you, as a budding masculist theorist, can hold your own with a male perspective in the gender war. Then enroll in a women's studies course and start challenging the statements of the female women's studies professor teaching your class. There's a chance that you may be thrown out of the class. If that happens, then you can complain to the dean of the department or even the president of the university you are attending, saying that the women's studies professor is misandrist and biased, giving a very one-sided view of the gender war, saying nothing about the gender war from the male side, and presenting feminist arguments that often make no sense in terms of empirical reality, being more propaganda than science. For example, the notorious pay gap between the sexes that the feminists claim is due to male prejudice in not wanting to promote women at work, resulting in women earning on average about a quarter less than men. A male student in such a class can pipe up, quote, "Well, that's probably because men are smarter than women on average by 4 IQ points, have higher testosterone levels than women, so are more aggressive, more ambitious, work more hours, and are more motivated to acquire a greater level of skill. Women also drop out of the workforce for several years to have babies. Single women in their 20s actually earn more money than men in today's world." When these feminist women's studies professors hear such stuff that runs so counter to their own ideological, quasi-religious beliefs, they'll probably suffer cognitive dissonance and feel hostile towards the male student and want him out of the class, so we'll arrange for that to happen. When there are several male members of the class who join forces and present a masculist/MGTOW perspective to the class, challenging the irrational, non-scientific aspects of the course, then it'll be harder for the female professor to throw them out of the class, because as a group, the male students can complain bitterly to their dean, the president, to their student newspaper or student website that they are being misandronized and abused. Young men on campus need to turn the tide on the feminazi mentality on campus, using strong masculist arguments. Women on campus need to be harangued for being, for the most part, fluffy crappers, studying fluffy crap majors that will result in most of them becoming fluffies as adults, who will then expect to parasite off some manslave when they're in their 30s, when they want to pay him for her to have kids, living in a middle-class house that he pays for. Male university students need to learn a lot more masculist theory so that they have the intellectual weapons to hit back at the fluffy feminists, so that men can hold their own when debating, arguing, haranguing women on campus, so that women get the impression, quote, "Hey, there's a new doctrine in town called Masculism/MGTOW, and watch out for men who can hit back at you with it. These guys are different from the usual female brainwashed males coming out of the female-dominated primary and secondary schools. These masculist guys hit back, often literally. If you slap them, they will slap you right back, and with real intellectual anger. Watch out for them." These masculist theorists need to be doubly armed, that is, with masculist/MGTOW ideas and with feminist ideas. Why is that? Being armed with masculist ideas is self-evident for anyone who wants to be a masculist theorist on campus. But what about being familiar with feminist ideas as well? Well, if you're arguing with a feminist and you make it obvious to her that you know her arguments as well as she does, or even better than she does, and are able to shoot holes in them, then you will be far more persuasive to her than if you know little about feminism. If your female opponent is conscious that you are well informed about feminist concepts and ideas and know their weaknesses, then she's going to be a lot more impressed with your masculist ideas than if you're only a one-sided masculist. She will be less able to dismiss you as an ignoramus who knows nothing about feminism. You will become a far more formidable opponent if you can talk both languages, that is, masculist and feminist, if you are to restore a balance in the sex war on campus. There's good reason behind the adage, know your enemy. For a masculist theorist, feminism is the enemy in so many respects. It has taken over the divorce courts and made them toxic for males, so much so that 2/3 of young men now refuse to marry, refuse to have kids, and spend their money on themselves. This makes the feminazi bitches who took over the divorce courts genociders, because indirectly it is they who are wiping out whole populations and have to be stopped. Men also need to restore their sense of self-respect by absorbing masculist ideas and feeling the confidence rush of being able to hit back, and hit back hard, at feminazi bitches, giving them a taste of their own medicine, and doing it with greater male intelligence and greater male verbal aggression that male biology allows. Men need a set of ideas that allows them to galvanize their psyches. Masculism gives men those intellectual tools that men can use to hit back at feminazis, haranguing them for being the genociders that they are, for lying to men about female superiority, when the reality is just the opposite. The insufferable arrogance of women on campus needs to be pricked by masculist facts. Men need to tell women very clearly that women are the inferior sex by ramming home the facts of female inferior intelligence. That is, the 4 IQ point lower average IQ difference between the sexes, of the 10% higher IQ variance of males over females, so that the morons and the genii are males, that men have therefore won 99% of the Science Nobel Prizes, that men have much higher testosterone levels than women, so are more aggressive, more ambitious, more dogged, more single-minded, more persistent, so achieve far more than women. There are very few great women, many more great men. Masculist theorists on campus ought to ram home to women their general inferiority relative to men by telling them that women invent almost nothing, build almost nothing, create almost nothing. They should tell women that women have been parasites of men for several million years, that women evolved to be prostitutes to men, to be better able to bribe men to give women male-hunted meat, so that women and their babies could survive. Men create the culture, women live in it, exploit it, but depend on men to stay alive. Without men, women would not survive. Women evolved to be baby factories and childminders, not to be able to understand and manipulate the world. Women evolved to manipulate men, to extract resources from them, by bribing men with access to their vaginas in exchange for male-hunted meat. Masculists/MGTOWs on campus need to reverse the inferiority complex that men suffer on today's campuses by teaching women of female inferiorities so that men can hold their head up with pride again, the way they did before women took it away from them with a very one-sided feminist ideology. Masculism restores the balance. Women need to be exposed to it so that they learn to be less arrogant about being female. In fact, women need to be taught or retaught their traditional inferiority because it corresponds to the reality. Female inferiority is what science shows is the case. One of the reasons why women have lapped up feminist quasi-religious doctrine is because feminism teaches, or rather preaches to women, that women can do anything men can do, and often better. Yes, the performance score distribution of men and women overlaps a lot. So women are capable of doing a lot, but not at male levels at the top end of the scale. Women need to be taught this so that they do not become dogmatically, unconsciously arrogant, an arrogance that is not based on scientifically verified reality. Women need to be put back in their place, that is, a place that corresponds with scientific realities. Trying to pretend that women are as capable as men at the top end of the scale is merely delusional and will only lead to female tears as women fail. Masculists need to restore a more balanced, more reality-based consciousness on campus. The necessary masculist intellectual tools already exist. For example, have a look at my flyers. So all that remains to do is to apply them on campus in large numbers so that men stand up for themselves and restore the pride of being male on campus, and then see that new consciousness spread through the whole of society so that men see the gender laws men fared, especially in the divorce courts, and bringing in such fundamental rights for men such as the paternity rejection right, equivalent to women's maternity rejection right, aka abortion right. That would give men an equal right to reject an unwanted pregnancy as women have, but men don't. Men need to be fed masculist ideas so that they are armed, weaponized against the formerly one-sided gender attack from women, from feminists on campus. Women need to be taught that there are two sides to this story and that women do not have a monopoly on gender issues. Men too have considerable trouble with the traditional male role, that is, in being a manslave to a parasitic fluffy who does not bother to get a career-competent education and expects to parasite off the money of a man. Young men need to get angry, to get informed, get masculisted, get intellectually armed, and then start taking back their campus, making it fit for men to be on as well as women. Masculisted men need to restore the balance that campuses have not seen for decades due to the one-sided imbalance of feminist rhetoric and women's studies courses with nothing equivalent on the men's side. No more. Men now have masculism and MGTOW, so these ideas need to be spread. Men's studies courses need to be set up on campuses. Men's lib groups need to be set up in every high school and campus. Masculists need to assert themselves so that women can no longer expect to walk all over men, thinking that women have a monopoly on gender discourse. No, they don't. Women have to be taught that from now on they have to share the stage with masculist/MGTOW ideas, and that will sober them, making them less arrogant and more sympathetic to men's problems as well. If you want to be a masculist on campus, then you need to educate yourself into masculist/MGTOW ideas and start spreading the word. Help set up a men's lib group on your campus. Push for a men's studies course at your university, etc. There's a ton to do. Cheers. Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. Email profhugodegaris@yahoo.com. Website profhugodegaris.wordpress.com. YouTube channels De Garis, Masculist, MGTOW, Flyers, and De Garis Essays. Ciao.